So thank you very, very much for giving me your time to speak about your experience on the Top Set Senior Investigator course. If you wouldn't mind, could you introduce yourself, your job role, and the company you work for, please?
Yeah, sure. My name is Garrick Hibbard. I'm the Global Head of HSSEQ Compliance and Performance Improvement at Seadrill. And it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
No, you're more than welcome. It's really good. We're grateful for having you. What I'd like to do is get an understanding for our viewers, and just to hear why you decided to go on the Top Set Senior Investigator course.
Well, bluntly, I've only been at Seadrill for sort of 18 months thereabouts, and when I came in, I didn't have any experience with Top Set. In most of my career, we've been in using Taproot, and so that was sort of where the basis was for me in coming into Seadrill. Obviously, in my position, you need to have an understanding of the methodology we use in the organization, and so that was really the precursor for me getting into the course.
And that's a really unique position in this. It leads me on to my next question. Actually, is what was your experience of the Senior Investigator course, given that you've been qualified in other methodologies?
It was great. I really enjoyed the course. It was very the thing I think I like the most is it's very, very hands-on. You know, actually getting into the weeds, you're actually walking through the process. So that there's theory, but then there's practical attached to it, and that helps to reinforce the thoughts and concepts, right? And the other part of that too is working in groups and leveraging the vast experience that we had in all of the different groups was really, really interesting, because I mean, everyone kind of has their own filters, but when you're exposed to other people, it was a very valuable exercise because it helps you kind of think through things in a different way.
And was yours a public course, so open to other companies, or were you on a Seadrill specific course?
It was a public course.
Oh,
it was
great.
Luckily pre-COVID, so yeah.
I've been on a few of those, and the interesting thing is, like you were saying, is the cross-pollination of not only the minds, but sometimes the industries, which is great. You know, you've got somebody from, I don't know, farming or chemical production, and they're saying we're having the same problems as you are creating mud, or you know, the technical terms for that. Okay, but so how do you feel you and your company benefited from you attending the Top Set Senior Investigator course?
Well, what part of my role is to support the areas in managing the whole HSE side of the business, and obviously we try and be more proactive. But as incidents occur, obviously walking through the investigation process, and what it's helped me to do is help provide a lot more, add a lot more value for the organizational investigation. So it's, you know, as we do our reviews, it's like, hey, tell me how you got to this conclusion, and asking some of those questions. So I think it's allowed us to leverage. I've got a lot of experience organizationally in the investigation process, different models, of course, but having a lot of experience doing these things, it kind of helps. You can ask some questions that maybe some of the younger folks who don't have the experience have thought about, and so you can kind of leverage that experience to help share those lessons from a number of years of doing this, and trying to get them to see things in a bit of a different light. So I think that's added a lot of value, and the overall quality of our investigations has gone up.
That's really interesting, and this is going slightly off piste, but the fact that you're adding value by asking those questions, do you think that's transferring to the people that you're asking? Is that received in the way that you're intending it to be received? And I don't mean that in a critical way. I hope you kind of get where I'm coming from in that.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, initially, and it coupled with the fact that I was new, but asking a lot of questions, I think people got a little defensive at first. But when I tried to explain what I was trying to achieve, it's kind of like, oh, okay. And now it's people have warmed up to that idea, and it adds value. So we actually have an internal incident review board process which top management is invited to, and it's basically the review of what happened and why. And what we've started to do is, because in the old days, we were asking these questions at the IRB. And so what I've done now is ask the guys, let's have a pre-IRB, so that if there's any silly questions or holes, let's identify those before you guys have to present to management. And so that part of it, all of a sudden, there's like, oh, thanks very much, because that's value add for everybody, right?
Especially management. Sorry to cut in.
Especially management, in the interest of their valuable time. We don't have to ask the questions because they're already been addressed, right?
Yeah.
So the process is, it started out a bit, I think it was challenging for people to kind of get conceptualized what I was trying to achieve. But now it's working to the point where it's asking those questions adds value. And not just me. I mean, all of the other management team that's involved does the same thing. So I mean, that's useful.
That's great. That really interesting, actually. And this is kind of moving into the final question. It's a bigger picture, given your global role. What do you, I mean, with respect to incidents and incident investigations, what do you see are the main challenges that industry, or your industry specifically, faces, and how does TopSet help with this?
Let me answer the second part first. So how I think TopSet helps, and it provides a simple yet systematic approach to walk through causation, right? So it's a lot less convoluted than Taproot. And I hate to use the comparisons, but that's what I know, right? So the problem I always had with Taproot is that you're forced to, everything is there. And you're sort of, sometimes it's like the square peg in the round hole. Sometimes it just doesn't fit, but it's the closest, so you pick that one, right? When you're looking at your basic near root cause. With TopSet, you're not forced down a path or into a bucket. And so you can let the evidence guide you, not the format guide you, if you will. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
So that to me is once you get your incident statement at the top of the chart, and you start asking simple questions, why did that happen? And you break it down to its most simplistic level, it becomes a lot more of a systematic process to follow, and it's simple. You don't have to, it doesn't require a lot of process or anything else, just requires a collaboration and walking through the process, which to me adds a huge amount of value. And my first hands-on experience was unfortunately in a fatality investigation earlier this year. And so myself and 4 or 5 other people went to the rig, and we used the process. Everyone had been trained. And it was, unfortunately, it was a very simplistic case to investigate, but it was, it was the worst kind. But again, we had success because the process allows for a structured and simplistic process, which is good.
Before I ask you to answer the first part of the question, you're not getting away with that. No. I was fortunate enough to sit in on one of our cloud classroom courses this morning, and a tutor who I haven't sat in with for a very long time. He used to be a chemical engineer, a very very clever guy, and he'd done investigations with no process for a long time. And he said, when he eventually came across TopSet, and there's no nonsense here, this happened this morning, he used 3 words. He said, I've written it down, simple, logical, and practical. And that's what makes sense. And it's kind of head in hand stuff. You've just been our marketing department. It's simple, logical, and practical. That's what you need. And you've just said the same thing. And thanks for that. So
the last thing that you want to be doing in a high stress environment, like investigating a serious incident, is having to think back and get your textbook out and oh God, what happens now? What do I do next? It's so that the simplicity of Kelvin Top SET is where it needs to be.
And
so to answer the first part of the question. So And how did you articulate the question?
So it was kind of with respect to incident so let's break it down. With respect to incidents, what are the biggest challenges that you see in industry? And then the secondary part, with respect to incident investigations, what do you see are the biggest challenges in your industry?
They may be related. I think the biggest challenge we have is trying to better understand human factors and how human factors influence incidents at every level, right? If you want to look at the control, all of the Swiss cheese and all the barriers that we have, how human factors affect each one of those as they fall down like dominoes. So that to me is our biggest challenge in terms of trying to get a better handle on managing human behavior and really understanding why people do what they do, so we can try and put in place better structures to prevent those things. So there's been a lot of progress, I think, made over the last several years in human factors. There's now a dedicated, the Human Performance and Oil and Gas Group, which has been established. We're involved with that. And so, there's a lot of good things going on, but that to me is still our biggest challenge, is trying to understand why people do what they do and really understanding human behavior so that we can try and model ways to change it.
Ironically enough, the more we learn about it, the more we change as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. We get smarter, we put more systems in place, and it potentially, rather than simplifies, can complicate things sometimes.
Sure.
And that, and really, they were the main questions I wanted to pick your brains about. And I just wondered if you had anything else you wanted to add about your kind of overall experience, because that was really useful. Thank you.
No, pleasure. No, my overall experience has been great. Like I said, I think that one of the biggest challenges we have in the investigation piece of this, and we see this when we're trying to manage it all the time, is confirmation bias. That's a big one. I mean, it's even if you know about it going in, it's still a challenge to not go there, right? So trying to get people to maintain that freedom, if you will, to allow the evidence to guide you as opposed to your bias to guide you, that to me is still one of the biggest challenges we face, and frankly will be for forever. While we have humans doing this stuff, no different than the first part of the conversation, right? Human behavior does what it does, and half the battle is understanding that these things happen. So, you can be that voice of reason when you see people making judgments or making presumptions or all of these things, right? But yeah, I think, like I said, my overall level of experience has been great. Frankly, when I went into it before any formal training, it was just like, it's just going to be another course, something I've got to, to your earlier point, check the box, right? And it wasn't that at all. It was enjoyable. It was a good spend of time. It was useful. And then when you sit back and package it, I still have my top set, the little briefcase you get with all the goodies in it. And I look at it every now and then because I want to keep everything fresh. But then once you look at it, you say, well, it's nothing really to remember. It's simplicity. It's simple in its format, which is the beauty of it, right? And so I think that's the relationship Seadrill's had with Top Set. I think that's why we'll continue to have that relationship, right?
Yeah. I'm just holding it up now. I hope you don't mind the Calvin and Hobbes, but that was, my sister gave me that. But I hope you've got the app on your phone. If you don't,
I do.
Yeah, that's a useful one as well.
It is, absolutely. Yeah, I actually downloaded that when we were in the middle of the investigation. When I was referring, we had David Crow and Karen were kind of, they were consulting us through the process. And obviously the magnitude of it, especially in the US with litigation as it is, we wanted to make sure we had a bit of adult supervision to make sure we're following the process. And Karen was like, hey, have you downloaded the app? I said, no, I haven't. So I downloaded it and everything is right there. So briefcase and an app, right? Yeah,
it is. That's really okay. You're now our marketing department as well. I'm fired.
No, it's all good.
Dear. Yeah, all good. Great. Listen, I'm going to stop the recording now, and then we can just wrap it up if that's okay.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Thanks very much for that.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.